1. Just got home from one of the weirdest shifts ever. It's 3 a.m. and I'm tired after working the weekend. For a bit of context, I work at a wine bar, where we have just as many guests coming in to eat a meal and drink a bit of good wine, as those tempted by the prospect of placing their asses in some lawn chairs on the patio and drinking cheap Chardonnay, while smoking that second pack of cigs in between snacking on cheese and olives. You know, the same thing you can do at home, with the exception that you're allowed to make a bigger mess, since you're not the one who will have to clean up. We attract all kinds of people. It's a wine bar, but we have a pretty big menu and a busy kitchen. We also have a shop that has about 400 to 500 different wines to choose from, with prices ranging from €10 to €250. After COVID hit the industry hard, a lot of places closed, but we weathered the storm quite well. Today started pretty normally. Regular Saturday with regular weekend folks doing regular weekend stuff. A few couples on dates, a few parents with children, some friends having a get-together, nothing unusual. Then at 10 p.m. my section got a 3-person walk-in. My subconscious categorized him as Drunk Tom Cruise, with his dear wife, and the sorry sober friend. Tom wasn't walking straight from the get-go. First red flag, but a worse sign was when he asked whether the owner was in today. He asked about him by name, and his tone suggested that he knew the owner frequents us a few times a week. I didn't recognize him as a regular. So what was the connection to the owner? Casual acquaintances? A friend of a friend? Either way, that's another red flag for sure. Luckily, I haven't seen him all day. With no indication of a late arrival, which I shared with Tom to his small disappointment. Still, they want a table, and from the few available ones, they had their eye on my section of the patio, so I set them. The kitchen closes at 11 p.m., so I wasn't thrilled by their arrival. I'm imagining how I'll have to babysit them till 2 a.m. while they're squeezing that last bottle for just a few more drops of alcohol and praying, in front of an inevitably empty glass, for tomorrow not to come, but what can you do? It was clear to me that if I was going to serve any alcohol in good conscience at that table, it was going to have to stop at 1 bottle of wine. Tom showed the most signs of recent heavy drinking, having trouble walking straight and blubbering more than speaking. His drunk wife looked a little tipsy, but not more than any other lady I saw today. And the sorry, sober friend seemed to carry a sense of shame for the behavior of his companions. I rested my hopes on that last one having some influence and responsibility for them, so I thought 1 bottle of wine split 3 ways won't make it worse, right? Wrong, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Luckily, they ordered no food, so at least that part was easy. I got them their wine and 2 bottles of water to go with it. And for a while, they didn't bother me with anything else. I had time to tend to other tables. It's still a Saturday. I kept myself busy. After half an hour, Tom wobbled inside. I was guessing he went out to use the toilet, but instead he purchased 3 bottles of wine from the store. This made me thrilled at first, since I thought he bought them to go, and is going to want the bill soon. But after a few minutes I saw one of the bottles at the table open, and already poured. We serve any wine from the store, you only have to ask. Normally I would be pissed since the restaurant had a 30% markup on the wine, which he just bypassed. But at that moment I was too tired to care. I just wanted them to not cause further trouble, pay and leave. I went to the table to check on them, and the sorry sober friend was somewhat apologetic about the other's demeanor, and said he didn't need anything else and asked for the check. Yes! Maybe this won't end in disaster. I rush back and bill them. No tip, but screw that. I'll be happy as long as they leave swiftly. I get back to other business, let them finish up whatever they had left. I was just hoping they would gather their things and resolve to go home. Nope. It's dark out there, you know. We have some proper lighting in one section, and there is quite a lot of light coming from inside, but a few tables. There's just a candle. It's good enough to tell whether someone is sitting at the table, only if they're upright and moving. Other than that, you need to really focus. And I was busy with other things to notice. The first thing that came to my attention were the stares of the other guests at my section, which led in the direction of a table I didn't have time to clean yet, but expected to find empty. After a second, I glimpsed a movement obscured by the table. Someone was on the ground. I headed over fearing the worst, only for reality to raise the stakes. As I came closer in the dim light, I saw the silhouette of a person sitting on the ground, buck naked. I turned around promptly because I do not want to deal with that for what I'm paid. I managed to catch the manager and told her flat out to call the police because drunk Tom Cruise from my section decided to go streaking. She's a picture of disbelief and thinks I'm joking. She goes to check out the situation while I'm trying to survey the surrounding area to see if I can make out anyone else from the trio. And luck is on my side, for there in the distance I recognize the drunk stride of drunk Tom Cruise. Just then, my manager comes back after inspecting the situation to tell me that sitting there naked on the ground is his drunk wife. I have great gratitude for my manager that night. She really came through and had more sense to act with than I would have. She quickly ran up to Tom when I pointed him out and got him to come back and get his drunk wife. It wasn't easy getting through to him. He could barely tell where was up. A few things were happening at once. One of my colleagues helped me clean that table. I didn't have time to do it beforehand, with a drunk wife sitting half a meter from it. To say it was awkward would be an understatement. Tom came back and tried to get drunk wife to get up, but she wasn't having it. She refused to get dressed and instead kept insisting that he leave her there and just went home. My manager told me she is calling security and not the police because there's no need for it. Yet. One of my colleagues came over with a blanket for drunk wife, which she somehow accepted, but still didn't get dressed. Tom scrounged enough brain cells together to call an Uber. Almost everyone on staff came over for a moment to have a look and bear witness. I was running around because all the other tables inexplicably wanted to close their tabs all at once. Some checks were delivered in stone-cold silence and raised eyebrows, some amidst a few snickers. Where was sorry, sober friend all this time? Who knows? That's a mystery I won't lose sleep over. He knew better than to stay, is what matters. Then security came over. Whether it was the passage of time or the presence of two stout men with security written over their chest, Tom and his drunk wife seemed to sober up a little. Then it was the usual whining of, we're leaving, just waiting for a ride. You didn't have to come. It's all right, it's all cool. Drunk wife finally managed to get her dress on, but just that. Right before the Uber drove up, the last image I have of the scene is my manager, in latex gloves, picking up the panties, bra, and everything else drunk wife left on the ground, packaging it in a trash bag, and handing it to drunk wife like it was contaminated. Then they got in and left. I exhaled. It was a long day. It's 6 a.m. now, but I was determined not to stop writing. Over the 10 years in the service industry, I have managed to rack up quite a few stories, and this one easily gets in the top 5. I'm going to sleep now, so I leave you with this testament to human idiocy. When I wake up, I might respond to some messages. Morning edit. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. You might be thinking, why didn't you just say, I can't serve you alcohol, sir, because you are inebriated? Which is just going to be met with, do you know who I am? Get me the manager. Don't screw with me and just bring the liquor. Are we allowed to serve alcohol to people who are drunk? No. What's the definition of a drunk? It's anyone's guess. The practical approach I learned over the years is as long as there are no troubles in sight, leave them to their own devices. I can't start giving away AA flyers to anyone I deem had enough. Maybe it's seeing the whole situation in context, but believe me when I say that I know that if I had told them from the start that they were not getting any alcohol, they would have straight up asked for the manager, who would likely argue for a moment and then tell me 1 bottle only and keep an eye on them. Not for a lack of caring, but to preserve the peace or an end-of-day Saturday. Rules are rules, but in reality it's always a play-by-play situation, Had all three of them showed the same signs of drunkenness, I would have acted differently. Had it only been drunk Tom Cruise who was drunk, but aggressive instead of peaceful, I would have acted differently. Had it just been Tom by himself, I would have acted differently. But it was none of those scenarios. I made a judgment call. This time, I misjudged. But I especially don't think you need to bring the store clerk into it. Think in context here, the dude didn't buy a cheap bottle of vodka or a six-pack of beer. What we sell doesn't really scream I'm gonna immediately destroy my life with this in some dark alley. Any wine from the store is served at the restaurant. The clerk really sells it to him to go, because it's really weird to go to him if you want to drink at the patio. That is what we are for. Lastly, you can lose your liquor license if you sell alcohol to a drunk person, in theory. In practice, I've never heard of such a thing happening. At any place, not even from a second-hand account of all those 10 years in the service industry. And please be assured that I'm aware that we live in a time where people tend to disregard safety rules for things like, say, for example, I don't know, how about a pandemic? With the same bullshit thinking of, I don't know anyone who's sick, so it must be a hoax. I have enough self-awareness to not apply such logic haphazardly. Even my manager didn't give me grief for what happened. She questioned me once about the situation, took my word for it, and shrugged it off as another one of those you can't save people from themselves situations. You could lose your liquor license if you serve to a minor, for example. That was taken seriously everywhere I worked at. Serve a minor, lose your job. Serve a drunk? Please don't. He insists, it's on you, as long as you know what you're doing. 2. So I work at an IHOP in the mornings as a host and carryout. It's old-fashioned and very out of date, but a nice place to bring in the sweet early hours. Plus the owners are a nice old immigrant couple who have been there near 3 decades, and they don't take shit from asshole customers at all, which is lovely. Anyway, we do online curbside orders via the IHOP site from what I understand. We get an order for a bacon temptation omelette, a popular dish that can and will be made quickly. Not a minute and a half later, the kitchen got the order near shift change, and it was already near made. We get a call from the woman who made the order, asking if we can sub the bacon for turkey due to religious reasons. Pretty sure she was Muslim, but an assumption on my part. We cannot change an order that has been made already, nor do refunds for online orders like this, that again have already been made. Corporate policy. She doesn't get it. She keeps pushing for a refund after explaining over the phone how we do things politely. She asks for a manager. I put the wife of the owner duo on. This lady doesn't get it. The owner puts a server on who is better at politeness and explaining things over the phone than most servers here, and once again, she doesn't get it. So, finally, the owner is the 4th person to talk to this lady over the phone. She now insists to come here and get a refund. He flat out says the food she does not want will be here waiting for her, as that's really all we can do to help her at this point. She comes in the door and asks for the refund, for like the 5th fucking time. Complains about how fast we make food, and how the site gave her no options for her order to be made the way she wants it to be made. This is not true, by the way. That's a new one for our carryout. The speed, that is. The owner calmly explains again and writes her the store ID of our IHOP, phone number and email of corporate after she asked, but is also getting ticked off because she is using big words to be condescending to our owner, simply because English is his second language. This happens way too much here, and the guests that do this really need to fuck off, and go to hell, lady. She leaves. Later, 3 minutes, calls to ask for his name as well as the name of the server she talked to over the phone. And here. She thought she was a manager. At this point, I'm cold to her. It takes a lot for me to turn cold to anyone, even in this industry. And just flat out tell her the woman was a server and I won't give her name. Gave the owner's name, as it truly won't make a difference to corporate as they set the policies and side with him. People truly don't get owners and general managers of chains are not going to get fired for stuff like this. She really just needed to call in the order if she was having trouble getting substitutions in online before making the order. Turkey bacon is an upcharge anyway. So yeah. told her really to take it up with her bank because after all this, the customer privileges really wore out. 3. I haven't been in the service industry for years, but I worked during high school and college in both restaurants and hospitality. Most of my memories are pleasant, but my very first day as a server was so intense. As a young high schooler, I had gotten a serving job at a local mom-and-pop pizza place run by a couple of New Yorkers whom my parents knew. The husband was your stereotypical Italian-American Brooklynite, who preferred to be cooking in the kitchen and not have to deal with the public. I had a shift of training with the wife, who was the main server, and I felt okay with it. The restaurant was pretty small, about 15 tables, with 2 or 3 out in the sidewalk. Well, baby's first shift was a Friday at lunchtime by myself. My best friend Lan, who worked at a fancy sushi place, came by to celebrate with me at 11 a.m. opening. Her plan was to eat lunch, then hang with me for a bit, then head over to her restaurant for her 2 p.m. shift. By 11:30, 11:45, the place was starting to fill for the lunch rush. I remember it being a rainy day, and I blamed the weather for what happened next. It was as if everyone in town decided to go get some pizza to compensate for the fact that it was a gross rainy Friday. I myself had eaten at this restaurant many times at lunch, and never seen it this insane. At this point, I've had 3 hours max of training and the restaurant is filled up. I wasn't even dealing with the obnoxious, impatient customers that we read about daily. But I could feel the massive pressure of trying to juggle all these tables. In no way was I ready for this in my first day, and I was freaking out. Luckily, Lan was still hanging out when things got intense, so without a word she just got up and started bussing tables. Then she started taking orders. I remember clearly at one point I was picking up food and my boss, the owner, looks over and sees this small Vietnamese girl putting in order tabs like she's been working there forever. "What's this?" he says to me. That's my friend Lan, and she's saving our asses right now." "Okay." So yes, Lan helped us deal with the crazy lunch rush, thankfully. She even hung around afterwards and received thanks from the owner. He wound up cooking her a large pizza, which she took right to her colleagues at the fancy sushi place. I will never forget the feeling of overwhelm on that first day as a server. It helps me keep a good perspective when I'm a customer at a busy restaurant. Honestly, I think every American ought to spend some time working in the service industry, in the way that other countries have required military service. Maybe it would cut down on the crap you have to deal with. 4. For some context, I am not a traditional table server. I work in more of a fast food style grab-and-go counter. It's a simple process of walking up, placing your order on a touch-screen kiosk, and submitting it, where it appears on a screen behind the counter for me to fill and give out. Now for the story. As many other restaurants, we are also understaffed, with usually only myself and one other person for the majority of the afternoon and evening. This day in particular was very exhausting, and I had spent the day running ragged to get food and orders out to everyone. It was nearing in on closing time, and I was ready to clean up and go home. The guy comes in for a slice of pizza, around half an hour before closing, and I've completely passed the cheery smile routine. I'm just counting down the minutes at this point. As I bring the slice of pizza over to the customer, I go into my usual, "Would you like a bag?" He says no and pauses before asking, "Has anyone told you you look beautiful today?" I stopped, at a loss for a moment, before I laughed and shook my head no. He then smiles and blows me a kiss and says, "Well, you're gorgeous and I wanted you to know that." I was so stunned. All I could say was thank you, which, in retrospect, might have been a little lame, but never did I ever expect such a compliment from a customer. As he left to go sit and eat in our dining area, I was beaming as I went into the back to continue working. A few minutes later, I hear my name being called by one of my coworkers. So I came back out and I see the guy waving his pizza crust in the air and asking me, "Did you make this pizza?" I confirmed that yes I did, about half an hour prior. He grins and tells me it's fucking delicious. I laughed and told him that I'm glad he liked it. He then finished eating and went to leave, but not before doing a little dance at the door before he opened it to leave. This happened about a month ago, and it was one of the best customer experiences I've ever had. He really gave me so much happiness in an otherwise bad day, and I kept smiling all through the rest of the week because of him. 5. Many moons ago, when I was supervising for our restaurant before our summer period, we had a group of contractors come in to fix our awnings for the outside terrace. Straight off the bat, these contractors were the most rudest, most obnoxious, and most entitled pieces of shit I've ever had the displeasure of working with. The first instance was the first few days after they arrived. For whatever reason, they start whenever we start, as in the restaurant staff. So when I and my colleagues were preparing the restaurant for a day's service, they were just starting outside. On this particular day, they were blocking the entrance to the restaurant with their shit. I asked them if they could get the entrance cleared, as my day was about to start, bearing in mind this was a Saturday, only to be met with, "Nah, man, you gotta wait, we're busy out here." I don't necessarily mind not needing to bother with tables since nobody was getting in, but the fact this tosser just responded as such without any sense of concern or empathy to the fact that his obstruction to the restaurant was now impeding my duties, which I was being paid for, pissed me right off. I of course had to call my boss and tell him the issue too, as to why by noon nobody was seated yet on the busiest day of the week. Thankfully my boss wasn't much of a prick and allowed it due to it being out of my concern. The next issue was one brought up by my colleague. For the days they came, they always demanded food. An hour after the restaurant staff arrived at work, the chefs would then arrive. On one particular day, one of the guys hadn't been fed and basically stated to said colleague, "I'm hungry." My colleague, knowing that the kitchen wasn't open yet, responded in kind, "Our chefs arrive in an hour, they will have food for you then." Of course this wasn't acceptable for this tosser. He looks condescendingly to the stairs and says, "You can't go up there and cook something for me?" "Unfortunately, we don't carry the keys for the kitchen, the chefs have them." "Pfft," came the reply. Fuck that guy in particular. Final rant came from what I was absolutely positive was illegal, and if I had any knowledge that I was going to be left high and dry a year after this happened, I would have raised a fuss about it. Something the contractors argued was the allowance to drink beer on the job, free of charge. I'm fairly certain that both drinking on the job as well as giving away alcohol for free are either highly looked down upon or illegal. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 149. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite kind of potatoes is. Do you like them mashed, fried, baked, juggled? Do you like to hang them from strings and throw them at the neighbors? Personally, I like mine both roast and mashed and in chip/fry form. I like to put a little butter, a little cream in there, some chives. What's really nice is mashed potatoes with sour cream and chives. A little butter in there as well, just for flavor. Not too much, just a little for flavor. Anyway. Yes, okay, now with that, let's... Oh, wait, no. This is Saturday, so hopefully there will be spoopy streams of some kind later. I'm not sure. If the dodgy game Ghost Hunters Corp I was playing improves, I might give that a go, just for a little bit on the stream. I don't think it's going to anytime soon, but they are making updates, so who knows. Okay, probably Phasmo. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.